for, gosh, generations now, there's been this one like bedrock rule in personal finance. You hear it everywhere from parents, mentors, financial advisors. Renting is throwing money away. Just this old saying, and it carries, a lot of weight, doesn't it? Like culturally. Owning a home equals success, independence.
It really does. But today, things are different. We're in 2025. The economy's volatile. Housing is incredibly expensive. That old rule, it's just not a universal truth anymore. You can't just accept it blindly.
Absolutely. Because you look at the situation now, interest rates are still stubbornly high, right? Many are hovering above that key 6% mark.
Yeah.
And home prices, they've just shot up, not just in the big cities, but everywhere.
Yeah.
So the basic math, it just doesn't automatically favor buying like it maybe did, say, 10 years ago.
Exactly. The emotional pull is strong, but it's hitting this brick wall of financial reality.
Yeah.
And that's really why we wanted to do this deep dive. Our mission here is pretty critical, actually. We need to strip away the emotion, get past what society expects, and break down the real numbers for you. What does homeownership actually cost versus renting in today's world?
Yeah, we've looked at a ton of sources, crunched the data. The goal is to give you a shortcut, really.
Yeah.
Help you figure out what makes sense for you based on your goals, your income, and crucially, your timeline in this specific economy.
We're digging into the nuances, the hidden costs that people forget, and figuring out the timing. Because this decision, renting versus buying, it's huge. It has to fit your financial strategy.
It's not just about having a roof over your head, is it?
Yeah.
It's a massive financial decision, a tool maybe, but one with huge costs attached.
Precisely. So let's start right there with that cultural pressure, that emotional side that often clouds the judgment.
Yeah, we have to start there because honestly, that's what trips so many people up.
Yeah.
Our sources show it pushes people into debt, makes them, forget about the actual plan. Buying a home isn't just a transaction. It's this huge social marker.
Stability, pride, independence. It's all wrapped up in it.
Totally. And if you're, say, renting past a certain age, there's that quiet little judgment sometimes, isn't there? Like you haven't quite, made it yet.
And that pressure is powerful. It leads right into what some research calls the emotional trap. People feel this intense need to hit that milestone, get that trophy asset.
Yeah.
And they jump into the biggest debt of their lives, usually a 30-year mortgage, before they're truly ready for all the costs, especially the hidden ones.
It's so easy to mix up that feeling, that place of my own feeling, with actual financial sense. I mean, if buying that house drains your emergency fund, locks you into debt payments you can barely make,
right?
Are you really successful? Or did you just swap one kind of financial worry for a much, much bigger one?
That's the core point we need to get across. Owning isn't automatically smarter. It's just a different tool. It comes with different risks, different rewards. For some people, maybe someone who moves for work often or isn't sure where they'll be in 5 years, renting, that offers safety, flexibility, liquidity. That's valuable.
Super valuable.
Yeah.
But then for others, maybe they're settled, stable, career, thinking long-term. Buying makes sense. It builds equity, forces savings in a way, gives that long-term stability, especially for retirement planning.
So the smart move, it totally depends on your goals and that timing piece. It's about customizing your strategy, not just following the crowd.
And the reason we're hammering this home in 2025 is because the whole economic picture has shifted. You've got these high interest rates multiplying the cost of borrowing, plus inflation hitting everything, including home maintenance. It just makes the comparison way harder than it used to be.
So to really compare apples to apples, we have to forget that simple rent versus mortgage payment thing. That's almost useless. We need to look at the total financial commitment of buying. And that starts immediately with the big chunk of cash you need upfront that people often underestimate.
Okay, let's get concrete. Use an example. You're looking online, you see a house listed for, say, $400,000. Looks great. That's the price tag everyone focuses on, right? They start plugging that into mortgage calculators.
Yeah, the sticker price.
But every source we looked at is screening this. $400,000 is not the total cost. Not even close. There are tens and thousands in extra cash you need just to get the keys.
Absolutely. Forget the sticker price for a second. 2 huge upfront costs hit you immediately. First, the obvious one, the down payment.
Right.
Depending on your loan, your finances, that's usually somewhere between 5% and 20% of the home's value. So for that $400,000 house, you need, what, $20,000 on the low end, maybe $80,000 on the high end, just straight cash out of your savings.
If you do go for that lower end, like 5% down, you instantly get hit with something else many first-timers forget. PMI, private mortgage insurance.
PMI.
It protects the lender, not you. if you default. And it can add hundreds to your monthly payment until you've paid down enough to reach 20% equity. It's just an extra cost.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. Still talking upfront cash. The second big one, closing costs. These are all the fees you have to pay.
Oh, yeah. Lawyers, appraisals, title insurance, loan origination fees, setting up escrow. It's a long list.
It is, and our sources show it's a serious chunk of change, typically between 2% and 5% of the loan amount, sometimes the purchase price. It's unavoidable cash you need.
Okay, so let's run the numbers. Maybe conservatively. You buy that $400,000 house, you put down 5%, that's $20,000. Then let's say closing costs are 3%, another $12,000.
Right.
You're already out $32,000 cash in year one, just to get in the door. That's before moving trucks, furniture, maybe some paint, or the first actual mortgage payment. That's a huge hit to your liquid savings.
It is, and critically, the financial drain doesn't stop when you move in. That's just the start. We have to talk about the ongoing costs, the stuff that's entirely on the buyer. This is where renters have that big advantage that they don't worry about leaky roofs or property tax hikes.
Okay, first up, property taxes. Can't avoid them, usually paid yearly or rolled into your mortgage payment, and they tend to go up as your home value increases.
Research suggests budgeting around 1% to 2% of the home's value each year. So on our $400,000 example, that's another $4,000 to $8,000 every single year.
Plus, if you're in a community with an HOA, homeowners association.
No, yeah, HOA fees.
That's another monthly cost. Or sometimes special taxes in certain areas, Melrose in California, things like that. Adds up fast.
Then comes the big one, maintenance. This sinks people. Suddenly, you're the landlord. Every clogged drain, every flickering light, every aging appliance, it's on you.
The rule of thumb, and it's pretty solid, is to budget 1% of the home's value every year just for upkeep and repairs. Stuff wears out.
So another $4,000 a year for that $400,000 house. And that's an average, right? One year it might be less. The next you need a new HVAC system for $15,000.
Exactly. Or a new roof. That can be 5 figures, easily. If you don't actively set aside that 1% each year, you're playing with fire. You're setting yourself up for a huge financial shock down the road.
Okay, so let's add it up. Property taxes, say $6,000. Maintenance, $4,000. Maybe slightly higher utilities and insurance for a bigger place. You could easily be looking at $10,000 to $15,000 a year in extra costs for that $400K home before you even touch the mortgage payment.
Okay, but now let's bring in the 2025 factor, the thing that makes this calculation so painful right now, the interest shock.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier, on a $400,000 asset, paying maybe $550,000 just in interest over 30 years. That number is staggering. Why is it so high right now?
It's that combination of high rates and how mortgages work. Amortization. When rates were super low, like 3%, that total interest figure was much, much smaller. But at 7%, every dollar you borrow costs way more over the long haul.
And the structure of the loan itself.
Exactly. Mortgages are front-loaded with interest. In the early years, say the first 5, 7, even 10 years, the vast majority of your payment goes straight to the bank as interest. Very little actually pays down the principal, the amount you borrowed. So you're not building equity very fast initially.
Okay, let's run that 7% scenario again. So $400K house, 5% down, $20K. Means you finance $380,000. At 7% over 30 years, the principal and interest payment, just P&I, is around $2,528 a month.
Right. And in that very first year, out of each $2,528.28 payment, maybe only $350 is actually going towards paying off the house. The other $2,200 or so, pure interest, gone.
Wow.
So now add back those other costs. Let's use the middle ground.
Okay.
Maybe $6,000 a year for taxes, $500 a month, $4,000 for maintenance, $333 a month plus homeowners insurance. Your real total monthly housing cost isn't $2,528. It's easily pushing $3,500, maybe even $4,000.
Okay. That is the key takeaway then. Buying isn't just the P&I payment. It's this whole package deal, this multi-decade drain. You absolutely have to calculate that total cost up front, or you're walking into a potential financial minefield.
Well, precisely. You need the full picture.
All right, so we've painted a pretty heavy picture for the buyer. Let's flip it. Let's talk about renting. It gets that bad rap, right? Throwing money away. Because on the surface, it seems simpler, but let's be fair, it has real downsides too.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest one is obvious. No equity. Your rent check pays for your housing that month, and that's it. Doesn't build any ownership stake, doesn't grow your wealth directly. The money goes to the landlord. End of story.
And then there's the uncertainty of rent increases. You don't lock in your biggest expense. Landlords typically raise the rent 3%, 5%, maybe even 6% each year when the lease renews. So your housing cost keeps creeping up.
Plus, lack of control. That frustrates a lot of renters. You can't just decide to paint the walls purple or renovate the kitchen or install the smart thermostat you want. It's not your property to modify.
True. But, okay, those are the downsides. What about the advantages? The things people overlook when they're caught up in the must-own mindset.
The biggest advantage, especially in a dynamic economy like 2025, is flexibility. Hands down. Think about it. Need to move for a great job offer across the country. Family situation changes. Just want a change of scenery. If you're renting, you give notice, maybe break a lease, which might have a penalty, but it's manageable. You're relatively free to move.
Compared to selling a house.
Exactly. Selling involves prepping the house, finding an agent, showings, negotiations, inspections, waiting for financing, paying huge commissions and closing costs. It takes months and costs a fortune. Renting gives you mobility. That's a massive financial safety net.
And the cash advantage we touched on earlier. No property taxes to pay directly, no sudden $15,000 bill for a new roof.
Right. The landlord handles the maintenance, the taxes, the big repairs. That 1% annual maintenance budget we talked about for owners, that's thousands of dollars the renter doesn't have to worry about or budget for. That's less stress, less financial unpredictability.
And maybe most importantly, the upfront cost difference. Renting usually requires first month's rent and a security deposit, maybe last month's rent. Compare that to the $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 plus needed for a down payment and closing costs on a house.
Huge difference. That capital, that cash, stays liquid for the renter. It's available. And if you're disciplined, this is key. If you take the money you would have spent on the down payment and closing costs and you actually invest it, renting can sometimes outperform buying financially, especially if the investment markets are doing well and the housing market is just okay.
Okay, this perfectly sets up the next crucial concept, timing. This idea of the break-even point. This seems like where the real comparison happens.
It is, because buying a house involves massive transaction costs, getting in and getting out. Financially, buying only really starts to pay off when the home's appreciation plus the small amount of equity you've built finally grows large enough to overcome all those costs.
Right, the closing costs when you bought, the agent commissions when you sell, all that interest you paid up front.
Exactly. And the sources consistently point to a typical time frame for this. The break-even point is generally somewhere between 5 and 7 years.
5 to 7 years. That's the minimum time you really need to plan on staying in a house just to get back to zero financially compared to if you had rented and invested the difference.
Pretty much, yeah. It varies by market, interest rates, appreciation rates, but 5-7 years is a very solid rule of thumb.
Okay, wait, let me play devil's advocate like a listener might. Why so long? If I buy that $400,000 house and the market's hot, maybe it goes up 5% a year. After 3 years, it's worth, what, $463,000? That sounds like a $63,000 profit. Yeah. Why doesn't that work?
Great question. Because that $63,000 is paper profit, let's break it down. First, remember those closing costs you paid when you bought? Maybe $12,000? Gone.
Right.
Now you sell for $463,000. You have to pay the real estate agent commissions, usually 5% to 6% of the sale price. Let's say 6%, that's another $27,180.
Gone.
Gone.
Ouch. That's almost $40,000 just in transaction fees, buying and selling.
Right. Now, the killer, the mortgage interest, remember how front-loaded it is. In those first 3 years, at 7% on your $380,000 loan, you paid roughly $79,000 in interest, and you only paid down the principal by maybe $10,000, $11,000. So you still owe around $369,000.
Okay.
So you sell for $463K, pay off the $369K mortgage, paid the $27 8K commission. You already paid $12K in original closing costs. You're left with maybe $54K. Well, you paid $79K in interest over those 3 years, plus taxes, insurance, maintenance. That's $63K paper gain. It evaporated. You likely lost money compared to just renting.
Wow. Okay, that really illustrates why that 5-7 year window is so critical. Selling too soon is financially brutal because of transaction costs and interest.
Exactly. So the simple, reliable rule holds. If you think you'll move in less than 5-7 years, renting almost always makes more financial sense. It protects you. If you're confident you'll stay put for 7+ years, then buying starts to look much more attractive as appreciation and equity have time to work.
Okay, let's sharpen the focus now specifically on 2025. Because the high interest rates really changed the game compared to, say, the 2010s. Let's talk about the 2025 rate effect.
Yeah, this is key. Rates are significantly higher than they were for a long stretch. We're talking 6%, 7%, sometimes higher depending on your credit. And forecasts don't see them plummeting back to 3% anytime soon. Global factors, inflation control. Borrowing money is just more expensive now.
And the direct impact on a buyer.
It massively increases your monthly payment for the same exact house. That $400,000 house we keep using. At 3%, the P&I was maybe $1,600, $1,700. At 7%, as we saw, it's over $2,500. That's huge.
That difference completely blows up household budgets. It affects your debt-to-income ratio, the DTI.
Absolutely. Makes it harder to even qualify for the loan. Or it forces you to buy a much smaller house or a house further out, maybe needing more work just to afford the payment. It limits your options significantly.
And people love the idea of locking in their housing cost with a mortgage, but that's not entirely accurate, is it?
Not really. Your mortgage payment has 4 parts: principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. PITI. Only the P&I part is fixed for 30 years. The T&I taxes and insurance are usually held in an escrow account and paid by the lender, but those costs, they almost always go up every year.
Right. Property taxes rise, insurance premiums increase. So even with a fixed-rate mortgage, your total monthly payment is pretty much guaranteed to increase over time.
Exactly. So that locked-in benefit is only partial, and while, sure, you could refinance if rates drop significantly later.
The refinance hope.
Yeah, the sources are very clear on this. Do not buy a house you can't comfortably afford today based on the hope that you'll refinance later. That is incredibly risky. Gamble on rates, bad idea. You need to afford the payment now.
So what's the strategic advice then for someone looking right now in 2025 facing these rates?
For some people, strategic patience might be the smartest move. Rent for another year, maybe 2. Use that time to aggressively save more for a down payment. Work on boosting your credit score. Even if rates only dip slightly, having a larger down payment means borrowing less, which means a smaller payment and less total interest paid. It can make a huge difference.
Waiting strategically, not just waiting passively.
Exactly. Improve your position so when you do buy, you're getting a much better deal financially.
Okay, and sticking with strategic thinking, let's talk opportunity cost. This is a big one people miss. When you buy, you tie up a lot of cash, right? Down payment, closing costs, money set aside for repairs.
Yep. That money is now locked into an illiquid asset, your house. Opportunity cost asks, what else could that money have been doing? What returns could it have earned if it stayed liquid and was invested somewhere else, like the stock market, index funds, maybe even starting a side business?
Let's quantify that. Say someone saved $50,000. They use it for a down payment and closing. That $50K is now in the house. Maybe the house appreciates, historically, let's say 3% per year on average.
Okay, so over 10 years, a $50,000 might grow to about $67,000 through home appreciation, a gain of $17,000. Not bad.
But what if they rented instead? And they were disciplined, they invested that $50,000 in, say, a simple S&P 500 index fund, which historically has returned maybe closer to 7–10% annualized over long periods. Let's be conservative, use 7%.
Okay, $50,000 invested at 7% for 10 years. That grows to roughly $98,000.
Wow.
That's a gain of $48,000 compared to the $17,000 gain from the house appreciation in this example.
That's a $31,000 difference just from choosing to invest an initial chunk of cash instead of locking it into the house. And that doesn't even count the 1% maintenance savings an investor could also be investing each year.
Precisely. It highlights that necessary mindset shift. A home is shelter. It's security, it's important. But it's not always the best investment, especially compared to liquid diversified assets. And particularly when high interest rates make the cost of borrowing for that home so steep up front.
Okay, we've laid out costs, risks, opportunity costs. Let's pull it together. When does buying actually become the clearly smarter, wealth-building move, despite all these hurdles?
Ownership really shines when you're coming from a place of financial strength and long-term commitment. First and foremost, you absolutely need that timeline. Planning to stay put for 7 years, ideally longer, that lets you ride out market fluctuations and get past that break-even point.
Stability is key. Stable income, obviously, but also critically, a really solid emergency fund, not just for potential job loss, but specifically earmarked for home repairs. That $20 roof fund needs to be there, liquid, not requiring you to take on more debt when disaster strikes.
Yep, and you need to be able to comfortably afford not just the P&I, but the total PITI plus that 1% maintenance buffer without feeling squeezed month after month.
And there's the benefit of predictable costs, relatively speaking. Locking in that P&I gives you insulation from rising rents, which becomes incredibly valuable as you get older, maybe heading towards retirement on a fixed income.
Big time. And don't underestimate what the sources call the forced savings plan. For people who aren't naturally great savers or disciplined investors.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
Well, homeownership forces you to build equity with every payment, even if it's slow at first. Over decades, that creates a substantial, often paid-off asset that forms the backbone of retirement for many people. It imposes discipline.
Okay, so that's the pro-buying checklist. Now, the flip side, when is renting the clearly superior financial choice, especially right now?
Renting wins if your timeline is short, definitely less than 5 years, probably less than 7. It also wins if your main financial priority right now is something else. Aggressively paying down high-interest debt like credit cards or student loans, building up your credit score, or saving a larger down payment for a future purchase when conditions might be better.
And location matters hugely, right? You mentioned the price-to-rent ratio.
Yes, absolutely critical, especially in 2025. If you live in a super hot, expensive city where home prices are just astronomical compared to local rents, renting is often the logical move.
Explain that ratio again. How does someone calculate it?
It's simple, rough calculation. Take the median home price in your area and divide it by the median annual rent for a similar property. So if the median house is $600,000 and the median annual rent is $30,000, $2,500 a month.
$600,000 divided by $30,000, that's 20.
Right. A ratio below 15 generally favors buying. 15 to 20 is kind of a gray area, but anything above 20. That strongly suggests renting is cheaper month to month and potentially smarter overall because prices are likely inflated relative to rents. In some coastal cities, that ratio is 25, 30, even higher. Buying makes little financial sense there unless you expect massive appreciation and plan to stay forever.
So if you value flexibility, live in a high price-to-rent city, or are still building your financial base, renting isn't just acceptable, it's often the smarter strategic move. No shame in that game.
Zero shame. It's about making the right choice for your circumstances right now. But wait, there's actually a third way. It's not just buy or rent.
Ooh, intriguing. What's the third option?
Some savvy folks are using a hybrid approach. The sources call it the rent and own model.
Rent and own. How does that work?
Basically, you separate where you live from where you invest in property. You might rent your primary home, maybe in an expensive city where you want flexibility or amenities, or where the price-to-rent ratio is too high to justify buying.
Okay.
But then you take capital you might have used for a down payment there, and you buy an investment property, a rental house, a duplex, a condo somewhere else. Maybe in a cheaper growing market where the numbers make more sense for cash flow and appreciation.
Ah, so you get the lifestyle flexibility of renting where you live day to day.
Exactly. No massive mortgage hanging over your head in an expensive area, no personal repair bills.
But you're still building wealth through real estate in a different, potentially more profitable location.
Precisely. You get real estate exposure, potential appreciation, maybe passive income from tenants, tax advantages, all while maintaining flexibility in your personal life. It kind of combines the best of both worlds for certain people.
That's a really sophisticated strategy. Rent where you live for lifestyle, buy where it makes sense financially as an investment, own your future without letting your primary housing cost dictate your life.
It's definitely something more people are considering, especially in high-cost areas.
Okay, as we wrap this up, let's circle back to that core idea, the mindset shift. We really need to stop seeing homeownership as this trophy, right? This ultimate symbol of success passed down through generations.
It's a tool, a powerful one, potentially, but just a tool in your financial toolbox. Nothing more, nothing less.
The real goal, the ultimate prize, is financial freedom. Is having control over your money, reducing stress, building assets that grow however you achieve that. The right choice, rent or buy, is the one that helps you reach that goal, not just conform to what society expects.
Couldn't agree more. So the summary for 2025. Renting versus buying isn't about right or wrong. It's about strategy and timing, especially with current rates making the math tougher.
If you're financially solid, got the savings buffer, plan to stay put 7+ years, buying can still be a fantastic way to build stable, long-term wealth.
But if you need flexibility, if you're focused on debt reduction, or if your local market's price-to-rent ratio is sky high, renting is likely the smarter, safer strategic play right now. It protects your capital and your options.
The main lesson, really, is don't let FOMO, fear of missing out, or pressure from family or friends push you into this massive decision before you're ready.
Run the numbers. Understand all the costs, transaction fees, interest, maintenance, opportunity cost. Know your timeline, know your goals, then choose the path that actually buys you freedom, not just 4 walls and a roof.
Because the goal isn't just owning a house, it's owning your life.
Well said.
That feels like a great place to pause. But before we sign off, we always like to leave you with one last thought, something to chew on.
Okay, here's one for 2025. We talked about that 1% rule for annual maintenance on a home's value. That's cash you have to spend just on upkeep. Now flip it. If you choose to rent and you have that extra 1% of a potential home's value available every year because you're not spending it on upkeep, what if you diligently invested that amount year after year, alongside maybe investing your initial down payment savings?
Hmm.
Think about the compounding growth of that saved maintenance money over 10, 20, 30 years. That's a hidden aspect of the opportunity cost. How does that potential investment growth compare to the forced equity building of homeownership? Something to calculate for your own situation.
That is a really crucial calculation. Food for thought indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the renting versus buying dilemma in 2025. We hope breaking down the sources and the numbers gives you the clarity you need.
Yeah, just remember that 5 to 7 year break-even point and really think about that opportunity cost. Those are your key takeaways.
Don't forget to subscribe. And thanks for watching.